There's going to be people in a large organization that just aren't comfortable, and that's okay. It's about finding those people who are okay with a little ambiguity.
Welcome to the Schmidt List, the podcast for people dedicated to managing successful projects, developing impactful products, and building engaged teams. And now, here's your host, Kurt Schmidt.
Amber and Rebecca, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, I'm excited to talk to you both. So today we're going to talk a little bit about innovation in the enterprise and product development and all that sort of stuff. But before we get started, maybe Amber, would you want to tell me a little bit about your background for the audience so they can know who Amber is?
Sure. So my career started at a fintech startup by the name of NetSpend in Austin, Texas. And there I actually started in marketing, and my third day on the job, my boss said, hey, we need a email lifecycle program, and you need to come up with the strategy, design it, and then figure out how to get it built. And so just that. And I didn't know any better. So I said, okay. And so I think, that was really the beginning of product for me, and understanding that if you can think of something, you can create it and get it built, and really loved that creativity and the power that comes with that, and the reward of seeing that, come to life. And so I was kind of hooked from that point on. Spent 4 years there. 4 years at a startup can be a long time.
Yeah. No, it's like dog years.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
It's actually like 30 years.
Right. I was being looked at as the old woman in the room. And so thought it was the time to get kind of some different experience. Mm-hmm. We happened to be doing a project for Target at the time, and had a conversation with one of my partners from Target about potentially getting back up north, closer to family. And 6 weeks later, I was driving my Volkswagen Jetta up I-35, wondering, what did I do? So I went to work in this cool little team within the financial services area at Target called Product Design and Development, but Financial Product Design and Development, which was often confused even at Target. But it did a lot of cool things within the financial services pyramid. We worked on the very early beginnings of mobile gift cards, the very earliest workings of mobile payment. And so it was a great space to land in Target, coming from a startup, because we were expected to be nimble. However, quickly realized just how slow, especially a financial services organization within a very large retailer can be.
Yeah, that's a lot of regulations.
It was, regulations on regulations.
Right.
And then, started to network out within Target to find my people, if you will, right? Find the other people that were looking to move fast, disrupt, create new experiences. And through trying to get Target gift cards on Facebook. At that point in time, Facebook was just supporting the sale of e-gift cards. So like Starbucks had done a little web app. I think American Eagle had done a little web app. And I thought, gosh, everyone loves Target gift cards. Why aren't we on Facebook? And basically my boss said, you have the time, but we don't have the budget. So if you can go figure out who has the budget, you can do it. So it was a great opportunity to actually get out and meet more people from Target Digital or Target.com at the time, and happened to, through that, find the people that were starting, or the person, Sarah Peterson, who was starting the social experience team at the time. She was the only person. And at that point, she had been told to focus on, when should Target be integrating with social platforms? Should Target be integrating with social platforms? And then figuring out the strategy around that. And so we kind of hit it off, and I decided to go and work with her in building that social experience team. And we got to do a lot of really cool things, because at that time, leadership didn't care about social. They thought it was a fad. I mean, I remember so many quotes about how Facebook is the hot thing that will be gone tomorrow. And this was in 2011 or 2012.
Oh, yeah. Flash in the pan.
Right, exactly. Right. It's nothing today. So, yeah, we were able to really play and partner with startups to, work outside kind of the standard bureaucracies of building within Target and build some really cool little quick test and learn web apps around testing different versions of social commerce. And so through that, we spun up several different experiences, one of which then became Cartwheel, initially referred to as social savings at the time. And, we thought Cartwheel was going to be just another one of these little web apps and that we would all continue doing our normal jobs. And then one day I was told that Cartwheel was my full-time job. and then we, built that for the next 5 years. Once Cartwheel got to stage of maturity, I was really missing the build, the ideation, the creation side of things. And I had the opportunity to jump to the Store of the Future team again at Target to kind of go and recreate that SWAT team mentality of, kind of pulling SMEs together from across the org, thinking differently and thinking outside the box and really creating from scratch this Store of the Future experience for Target. We did that. We got about 2 weeks away from actually breaking ground and constructing the Store of the Future. And unfortunately, much of innovation was cut at that time. And so I knew it was time to move on from Target and find some, a different place where I could create and innovate and ideate. And I landed at Go-Kart Labs, where obviously I helped other clients build their products and disrupt their businesses. I did that for a year, and then I welcomed my first daughter into the world, wanted to take time to focus on her, and so did that for 6 months, and now I'm an independent product consultant looking to work with other really smart people and create great products.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. All right, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you guys met at Target, is that right?
We met at Target, yeah.
What were you doing before you showed up at Target?
Yeah, before that, I worked at a few local agencies here in town, always on the media side. So my career really started in traditional media because back then that was media, right? Digital media didn't really exist. And so I worked at several agencies throughout Minneapolis and St. Paul. And then probably around 2007, 2008, that's really where we saw the shift in the marketplace to more digital. And so that's where my interest was piqued. And I started focusing more on just the digital media discipline. I did that for several years and then saw the convergence of media and technology. And so since then, I've really been focused on media technology, marketing technology. Started at Target, was recruited to Target in 2010 to help bring digital to their media strategy team at the time. After about a year of that, I moved over to the social media team, which is where I met the lovely Amber. I was her counterpart. So Amber was focused on more the development and the social experiences and building that, and I was focused on the marketing. So together, she and I built experiences together. She built the framework. We would ideate and iterate on concepts, and then I would build the marketing plan. How are we going to get users to the experience, and how are we going to get them to use it? And Amber said it perfectly, but that's really how the story of Cartwheel came to be. And together, Amber and I and Sarah, we were essentially the founding team from the social team who created Cartwheel.
That's very cool. Yeah, it seems so interesting to me, the whole idea of Cartwheel and how it came about, because a lot of other large organizations don't really have that same sort of story, right? It's even though they all have sort of these innovation labs and all these different things, it's rare to see something like a Cartwheel get born inside an organization. What do you think why did that happen?
When people often ask that question, and I always say it was, right people, right place, right time, because it truly did happen pretty organically. It was almost as a force, of people banding together to kind of take advantage of all these things that were happening in the marketplace, right? You had social platforms were just coming out, opening up their platforms to be built upon and integrated with. People were really excited about apps, right? The iPhone had only been out for a few years. Yeah. The App Store was still a relatively new thing. Mobile was still very, very new. I mean, we were for sure very much web first. And on top of that, I think Target at the time was really looking to make a stamp on digital. It was right after the replatforming of Target.com, the first replatforming of Target.com. Right. By very much public accounts didn't go so well. Right. And so leadership needed to have a win, frankly. And so that's where I think right people, right place, right time. And, in terms of the experience itself, obviously the idea that we started with isn't the thing that, it grew to be, right? And I think the important thing again was just that kind of organic, authentic evolution of the team, which allowed us to evolve that initial idea.
That's really cool. So Rebecca, let's talk about executive sponsorship, because I feel like a thing like this couldn't have been born without the right people clearing a path for it. Plus, also change as much as you are telling me it did over time.
Absolutely.
Because, I've seen so many times where you come in and you're like, we're going to do this innovative thing. And then 6 weeks later, if you were to come back and tell that stakeholder who just went and told all of their people in the boardroom that we're doing this thing, and you come back and you're like, no, actually, we're going to do this thing. They'd be like, well, I just told everybody that we're doing this thing and it's the future of our business and all this stuff. And now you're telling me it's different. Like, I can imagine how important having that executive sponsorship.
Oh, it was hugely important. I think, Amber was talking about and alluding to it. What really helped us and helped our executive sponsors at the time sell this idea through is there was just this trigger that needed to happen internally. There was a tipping point, right? We had faltered in some of our digital experiences. We had a new CMO who really was looking to make his stamp. And so all of these things kind of working together created the perfect storm for us. Right people, right opportunity, right time. But we had amazing executive sponsors who were willing to take the risk. And I think that's one thing that for any, executive sponsors out there or executives in a large organization, you have to not be afraid to take risks. You have to be bold. You have to be courageous. We were talking about this before, but you have to be willing to upset people and upset status quo, because that absolutely will happen. But it's hugely important. You need that sponsor to break down blockers and barriers for you and to give you the freedom to just go. Put the people that they trust with the expertise to make this happen and just let them go.
And I think, not just internal executive sponsors, but also external executive sponsors.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Which, that situation would be unique based on your business. But for us, we definitely couldn't have done what we did without really close partnership with Facebook and really other large tech organizations at the time that were all kind of sharing the same story that we were sharing with our leaders at the time to try to push forward this product model about the benefits of working in agile, in product, what that meant, the importance of moving fast and being nimble, the importance of flat organizations, the importance of co-location, which sounds silly now, but I very much will always remember clearly when I wanted to go to India to sit in the same room with my developers who were building our experience at the time. I very clearly was told we could never have business sit in the same room as developers. That will never work.
That will never work.
That will never work.
That's a dumb idea.
You're right. And, we can say all we want to leadership, but really having those external partners that are especially respected in the area of technology and in the area of digital, especially thinking about where Target was with digital at the time. These are the experts in the area. Sure. Having them push the same goals and same suggestions really helped us as well.
That's interesting because, speaking of those outside stakeholders, one of the things that I constantly run into is especially in larger organizations, even small ones, they don't want to show something that's kind of half-baked or something that's not fully polished or fully realized. And I feel like that's held back so many organizations in the ability to get those stakeholders externally excited about things and seeing how the company's changing. How do you coach somebody around that? I mean, you both lived the idea of it. I mean, and especially Target, which is such a strong brand, the idea of showing sketches to people and stuff must have been insane, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think for sure at first it was. I remember having conversations with my marketing counterparts about how we're going to bring this product to market and to launch, and how we were going to do it in a very soft and quiet way, which was completely the antithesis of how Target approaches any product launch.
Right. No, it's like shoot off a cannon.
Yeah. And like literally having a meeting with them and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. And them asking, well, where's the deck? Well, I don't have one. What do you mean? Like they just could not believe that I would, how dare you do something like that. But eventually you have enough conversations like that, and people see the momentum. But again, it goes back to like, you can't be afraid to upset people in the status quo, because it absolutely will happen, and people are completely reticent and uncomfortable with change. But anything worth doing requires that.
Okay.
And I think, too, realizing that your experience or your product is going to be so much better. Not the more people, but I would say, I guess, the more diverse viewpoints that you can bring to the table. And obviously, with a brand like Target, we're very fortunate. We were very fortunate to be able to tap on to the expertise of, the Facebooks and other partners. But, some of those, thinking back to some of those ideation sessions and those whiteboarding sessions we had around the experience at that time, I mean, would never have happened in the way, or would never have been as productive if it would have only been the same people that we stare at every single day. Right. Because you need to shake it up in order to think outside the box a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think that's because the way people innovate has changed, right? Before it was, you get a couple of scientists in a lab with like security and stuff, and you don't let them leave for like a year, and out comes this new product of some kind, right? Now it's like people are running through the streets with little flip decks on their phones and stuff, and try to see what you think.
Right.
It's all in the open, right? And I think that some of these larger, older organizations have struggled very hard because these executives and these people they felt like they were put in their place because of the decisions that they make, right? And that's part of their job. But a lot of their jobs have changed where it isn't, I'm command and control. Now I'm like education and support. And I feel like some people have missed that sort of calling, because nobody's really said it. Nobody's came out and said, this is the new way we work. And this is what your job is now, executive sponsor, and this is what your job is. And people really haven't had a lot of those conversations. But in that case, as you were talking about earlier, Amber, if I'm in a highly regulated thing like healthcare or financial tech or any of those sorts of organizations, it is hard to test something, isn't it? I'd really like to hear your opinion. Like, again, if I'm trying to actually make a minimum viable product, but I have to follow HIPAA regulations or government tax info or things like that. I mean, how do I get around that headspace? Like, how do I get out of that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's much harder, but, some of the things that come to mind are there super solid fundamental aspects of what you're trying to do that could provide the guardrails for your sandbox, for example? So could you take those pillars or your guardrails through, the standard approval or review process with your regulators while you continue to innovate or design the experience within those guardrails? The other thing that comes to mind is, when we were trying to keep things incredibly confidential prior to the Cartwheel launch, we honestly did not do, by any means, robust user testing, mainly for that fact. And so, as a team, we really felt like we needed to bootstrap something, right? And so, I mean, one weekend we actually had our moms come in, and you couldn't even access the experience outside of the Target network. So we literally had to bring our moms to our little workspace on a Saturday, take them to the only store with the one register that it would work at. And, that sounds really silly, but honestly, it was super informative, because we felt like, okay, if our moms get this, I mean, no offense to our moms, but if our moms get this, then at least we know directionally that we're doing something right.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So if I'm listening to this, Rebecca, and I'm thinking to myself, like, where do I start when I'm trying to find those groups? Like, sure, I've got my mom, right? But let's say, okay, fine, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. You guys got me. I'll make something really lo-fi or something, and I'll start showing it to people. Where do I start? Do I just people in the hallway? Do I accost people on the street? Like what's a great starter plan for somebody?
I'm a huge proponent and fan of the friends and family groups, to Amber's point, getting our moms. But what we also have done is, just send an email out to all of our close friends and then ask them to send it to their friends. Okay. And what we want you to do is be a part of something. We want you to help us shape the next best product in the future, right?
Get them excited.
Get them excited. Something that we talk about a lot is, like, our users of the app, our guests, they helped us shape it. And they felt great about being able to do that. They felt great about having the opportunity to tell us what features they liked and what features they didn't. It almost became somewhat of a badge of honor for them, really. And this group, the entire lifetime of the app and while we had it open, they were still posting every single week, like, hey, what happened here? A lot of times they would be the first ones to identify a bug before we even knew it existed, right? So incredibly helpful. And
incredibly affordable.
Yeah, this is really free.
Sure.
So, I think that was probably one of the best things that we did, and really was not done by design. It was just kind of done out of not having a budget to do.
Right.
I do think it's interesting when people, say, gosh, how do you get permission to talk to your users, or how do you find people to talk to? Right. And not everyone has the luxury of having a really popular consumer app, but I always challenge that assumption, because everyone's a user of software at this point. Yep. Right? It doesn't matter what that thing does. I mean, everyone can open a website, open an app, right? And so, if it is as simple as walking out on the street or going down to the coffee shop or just starting a conversation, right? I think the hardest thing to do is just to take that first step in terms of user testing and kind of setting aside the presumptions that you have in your mind about how user testing has to be this official, structured, scary thing. It doesn't have to be that at all.
Because sometimes I guess those initial casual conversations can then help you structure more formal ones later, right?
Exactly.
Makes sense. So what about to that ownership part? The one thing that I've seen places struggle with is that, why is this innovation team talking to our customers? And why are they asking these things? I'm sales, I own the client relationship, or I'm marketing, and I own anything that gets broadcast from here on, like, why we have value or benefit. I mean, how have you in the past, maybe start with Rebecca, like, how have you in the past, like, broached that conversation?
Yeah, I think it's one that happened frequently, of course. I'm sure happens at large organizations all over the place. I think the one thing that we tried and did, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so much, but is trying to bring people along with you and get them to buy into what you're doing and make them believers.
Don't just show up in a meeting and show them a deck.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're doing this together. The other thing I will say is just my general feelings on innovation is that they are owned by everyone. Everyone in an organization is responsible for being innovative, right?
New ideas, right?
New ideas. And it means something different for everyone. And, I wish that organizations would kind of get rid of the innovation title and really think more in terms of, like, what are the outcomes? And I think if they did that. They could be
the outcomes lab.
The outcomes lab. I mean, sure, some teams are going to be, responsible for rapidly spinning out products. Some teams are going to be responsible for testing. Some people are going to be responsible for scaling. And so I think if we could assign some guardrails around what are the outcomes, what are the deliverables, then it makes it easier to partner internally rather than to say, you're the innovation team and it's your responsibility to do this, and everyone out here just keep doing what you're doing. I think that's a recipe for a lot of internal conflict.
You have touched on some different sort of hacks almost, it feels like. What are some of the things that, because again, you kept talking about how there was no budget. Let's say I'm somebody who's in a startup, I'm listening to this, like, what are some things that you found worked really well or maybe surprised you when you were like, well, I don't have any money, so I'll try this. And you're like, holy crap, like this, what are some of those things that you found in your careers that works?
I mean, honestly, that, bootstrapping user testing, really, you talk about the best ROI. I mean, I would say for sure that's been the most successful in terms of not underestimating the value of, just gathering a group of people around a table, buying them coffee and donuts and showing them a paper prototype. And also then emboldening them to give you ideas for a donut, right? I mean, because while, you may know that certain idea A, it won't make money or, you can't afford it, it always makes you think of other ideas. And so for sure, like Rebecca said earlier, where Cartwheel ended as an experience really truly was a result of us just listening to the users. They told us where to take that product because what we launched with was, I think nearly a 180 from, where it landed a few years later. And it really was just listening to the users. And so whether we were, large Fortune 30 retailer or a startup, it didn't cost us any money to listen to the users, right? So
coffee and donut money.
Right. Coffee and donut money.
How about you, Rebecca?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the same. A lot of it. I mean, we existed to be there for the consumer. And I believe that even in my work today, like I want the users of whatever product to tell me what that is. And it's so easy. It's so easy to ask for opinions. And it's, I don't know. I think that's probably the best hack. There are some other specifics that are really specific to that specific product, but I won't get into that right now.
Well, what about, because it's very different than focus groups in the traditional sort of, asking people to vote almost, right? Things, right? Which I think some organizations feel a little bit more comfortable with. It feels they've got a bit more control in a focus group, right? Yeah. And was that different for you? I mean, did anybody come in and be like, well, we should focus group this thing?
Oh, yeah. We totally did focus groups. But truly, I never found the output of those more valuable and maybe even as valuable as the informal things. And, one of the other things that is completely free is, we created, as any experience does, a contact us inbox. Sure. And I manage that inbox as the product manager. And I know for sure when we got big, probably wasn't in the long term the right decision, but it was so valuable for me to just understand, have that kind of purview from the guest and in an immediate form to know right away, if this is just one person saying this thing and it's an outlier, I know that right away. But if it's 5 people in one day saying something, then I know it's really important because that is actually, a strong indicator that there's a problem. And so being able to represent that also with our developers, so they kind of always have that similar purview, was really critical to success as well. And again, doesn't cost any money. Yeah. It's just about having your finger on the pulse.
The way that you folks are describing how this worked, it's like the ship tilted and then your chairs kind of slid together, right? It wasn't very deliberate, right? Whereas nowadays, people are standing up these innovation labs or these teams and they're like, go innovate. But what I've seen people have the struggle with the most is how to build that connection to the business side from the innovation team. Whereas, once you have this innovation team, the business side is like, okay, that's the people with beanbags and stuff like that and whiteboards over there. I'm actually keeping the lights on and things. But the issue is getting that connection between those groups. What are some of the challenges you've seen and its solutions to solving that problem?
Well, actually, my experience on Store of the Future was exactly that, right? It was the kind of opposite of how a Cartwheel was organically created versus, a team specifically labeled innovation and all those things that go with it. And, one of the interesting challenges to that team at the time were the people back at headquarters, if you will, who said, well, wait a minute, isn't it my job to help create the Store of the Future?
Right.
Aren't we all doing that?
Right.
And, you can't argue against that. And so I think that's, to Rebecca's earlier point about the challenge when you label something an innovation team, you are by nature kind of insulting the rest of your org to say that that's not their job.
You're the neutral team. We're the awesome team.
Right.
Team awesome.
Right, exactly. But if, I think to your question of how can you ensure that they're connected back to the business, I think it is focusing them on outcomes, right? So if instead of the innovation team, they are the, how are we going to, surpass 10 billion in revenue in 5 years, or throw out that crazy goal, and it's that team's job to go after that crazy goal, right?
Figure out how to get there,
right? And at the same time, you need to give them enough runway, and you need to give them the freedom to really drive and do their jobs. But at the same time, you need to hold them accountable, right? Because at the end of the day, they are a part of running your business, and they are a part of making sure that your business is successful long term. And I have seen, where innovation teams can really go off the rails when I think when there's not that checks and balances there.
Yeah, it brings up something. This is funny. So if you do have that innovation team that's like, we're the innovation team, we're like shiny and awesome and all this stuff, and then you have the business side that's like get outcomes and things like that, where I see especially because people, no matter what, they still follow some frameworks and stuff, and lean seems to be one of the more popular ones, and lean talks about failing fast and all that stuff. So, but the business is like, why are we throwing this money and stuff, and you just keep failing over and over again, right? Even though, it seems so odd. I did a talk just last year with a bunch of very high-level executives, and they were asking me about how do we experiment? How do we experiment? And I'm like, this has literally been around since the 1400s. It's called the scientific method. It's not revolutionary, right? But I think where people struggle is the idea of rewarding failure, right? Yep. How have you seen it work in the past where you can make mistakes and the business is like, that as expected, or get around that? I mean, how have you found ways to do that? Or is it just banging your head against the wall until somebody tells you to stop? Well,
I think it's kind of a piggyback to the previous question, but I think to build an innovation team, you really should have stakeholders from, cross-functional teams, right? So it's not just the innovation team are made up of, engineers and product people or what have you.
Just tons of people from the outside airdropped in.
Yeah, they have crazy ideas and I wear funky clothes and whatever. No, it's like you really should have someone from, operations. You need a product manager. You need someone from, in our case, or retail, it's merchandising, marketing. Put them all on that innovation team. And then now you have representatives of all the stakeholders and your partners within the organization.
And all the major moving pieces in the business, right?
That's exactly right. And then from there, it no longer becomes I'm business person A giving, a portion of my budget to innovation team over here, but I'm business person A as a part of the innovation team. This is my budget. I'm accountable for the outcomes. And if we fail, well, we're not going to spend all of our budget here. So it's okay. And let's just move on. But I think that failure thing is interesting because it certainly was a part of what we did, but we all were committed to, if you fail, you learn and then you move on and you iterate and you don't fail again in the same way, right? It's really important to be held accountable, as Amber was saying, to those outcomes. But then also as a person, and a steward of that brand or that product, it's my responsibility to learn from this and make a better decision next time or a different decision.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I think people struggle with that because it is this, there's half of this where it's like, I want to push against the boundaries, but I don't want to get fired. Right?
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
I mean, that's where I think you have to have buy-in from the top down, right? And not even just, I don't even think it works if only the top is bought in, right?
Sure.
You really need to have buy-in across the organization. And that doesn't mean that every single person has to be your cheerleader, but you do need specific representation in every significant, whether it's pyramid or organization that knows the objectives of that team, that can speak to why it's important for the company, and that can defend the work and the budget to other people as questions come up. Because I think Rebecca may have touched on this, but as innovation often threatens the roles of what other people are doing, right? So if innovation is successful, well, then that means that something in the business is changing, and therefore certain roles in the business will need to change with that. And if that's the case, then, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to my job?
Easy path to follow, right?
Right. And then suddenly you have people that are angry. You have the angry mob, if you will. So if you don't have leaders across the organization that are bought in order to be proactive, to make sure that that angry mob doesn't build and fester and grow, that's where I think having an isolated innovation team can break down.
Yeah, makes sense. So one last question, though. So yes, I need those executive stakeholders clearing the way, but what can I do as the innovation team to market ourselves internally? Should I do a road show? Should I do presentations? Like, what's the cadence and things that you've seen work really well in terms of exposing the work that's happening in one of those places?
I think roadshows we did a lot. Amber was the primary presenter in many, many of those.
It's because I had the pretty pictures.
I also think, I prefer to work on a more one-to-one basis. And so for me, it was, just scheduling some time to talk with someone. And we also had this goal that every single meeting we had, work would come out of it. We weren't just meeting to meeting and talk, like we were meeting to have an outcome of that. So I really tried to put those guardrails around who I would meet with. And in those discussions, I would show them the value of like, this is how we're going to do things. I can't do this without you. How are you going to be a part of this? And do you even want to be a part of this? Because the way we worked and the way Agile and Lean it's not for everyone. There's going to be people in a large organization that just aren't comfortable, and that's okay. It's about finding those people who are okay with a little ambiguity.
And I think to that point of, the way you're working isn't for everyone. I think we learned that probably the hard way, right? Because it's so easy just to take for granted that, oh my gosh, what we're doing is so great and everyone loves it and everyone wants to do it like we're doing it. Definitely not the case. And I think had we learned that earlier on, some challenges that came up down the road probably could have been avoided. So, to your point of how might an innovation team stay connected to the business, I also think it's really important to not just go out and do road shows, but also just go out and listen to people from across the business, right? And ask them, what are your challenges? What are your ideas? What are your goals? And how might what we're doing help you,
Yeah. That's great. So we're going to wrap up here, but I wanted to find out if people listening to here are interested in some product help. What's the best way to find Amber? I mean, this is the woman who helped create Cartwheel, and I want some product help. I might as well call the best. Where do I find you? How do I get a hold of you?
It's really easy. They can email me at amber@amberreimer.com or just go to my website and find me there.
All right. And if I'm in need of some growth and some user knowledge, I mean, Rebecca's an amazing growth hacker and can help a lot of businesses, but where do I find out more about what Rebecca's doing?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. I'm currently taking on new clients and working with amazing people right now, really taking what I did for Cartwheel and bringing it to them, focusing more on like small, mid, some larger businesses. But to your point, really focused on growth and retention of users. So if you find yourself in a need of that, you can find me at Rebecca at limonemarketing.biz. Limone is Limon.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm going to have links to everything in the show notes on the website. But I want to thank you both so much. I learned so much today. Thank you for taking the time to join me.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Schmidt List. If you want to learn more about how Foundry accelerates innovation, check out foundrymakes.com. And if you'd like me to speak about establishing a growth mindset at your conference or with your team, drop me a note at kurt@foundrymakes.com. Oh, and the next time you're on the internet, head to iTunes and leave the show a review. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, because sharing is caring. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen to the show, and I hope you have a fantastic week.